that encouragement from you. The next one, I would like to now request Mr. Anil Agrawal, Additional Secretary, DPIIT, to share his thoughts with us. Welcome, Mr. Agrawal.
Mr. Sanjay Agrawal, Mr. Atul Bilal, who also happens to be my class fellow from BITS Pilari. Not many people know that, but why should we hide it? Mr. Vinod Sharma, Mr. Marbaha, Mr. Kumar Vineet, all stalwarts of the electronics component industry, ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor and a privilege for me to be standing here today amidst all of you. When Mr. Agrawal and Mr. Vinod Sharma requested me to come over on a working day in the forenoon for an event, I tried to avoid it, honestly. But they were so persuasive,
very difficult to avoid.
I couldn't refuse. And I think I gave in to the right impulse that I must attend this event. And I'm extremely happy to be here, listening to the stalwarts of the electronics component industry here. This is probably the hub of electronics manufacturing. Noida. I think we were discussing, like, if you have Gurgaon as the software center, you have Bangalore as the software center. Noida is the center for manufacturing of electronic hardware. Whole lot of global companies are established here. I was just thinking, we've all been talking about the mission that Elsina has. He also said we've missed the bus in hardware. Famously somebody said, we've missed the bus in hardware. Can we now make it a mission to establish Noida or UP as the hardware capital of India? Can we think about it? I'm sure government of UP will fully support this. They will fully support it. They'll be fully on board on this idea. We have the entire ecosystem here. But then, as you pointed out, we'll have to do something more than what we are doing today as an industry. I am a government officer. I am a bureaucrat. I cannot claim to understand the industry at all. I may have spent 10 years in the industries department, but still I can't understand industry as well as an industrialist does. I can't do that. However, looking at the perspective that I get, there are some observations which I would like to share with you. Most of the times, are we not following international standards in all your components, everything? Yes. There is some international standard that we follow. Following an international standard has its costs, right? You will develop technologies, you will buy machines, you will establish processes to conform to those standards, right? It has a cost. Can we not have our own standards? Standards developed locally, which we enforce on the world. And see, unless today you get money from exports, you are not actually growing. If you are catering to the domestic market, you are actually not doing enough. You have to think big about exporting to the world. What you are producing, if it is not good enough for the world market, it is actually not good enough to be consumed domestically also. And for developing local standards, like you said, you've implemented 36,000 ideas for improving capacitors. You were also saying you've done so much of improvement in capacitors. You've done so much of innovation. Can we not have some standards based on what you've done? Let's talk to BIS. Can we not have those standards and try to implement those standards in all our products? Over time, let's think of issuing QCOs based on those standards. And then if anyone has to follow here, they will have to follow our standards. Money will come. And money will come to you only. But उसके लिए एक थोड़ी सी लंबी सोच की जरूरत है. उसके लिए दाल रोटी चल रही है, उससे काम नहीं चलेगा. उसके लिए इससे काम नहीं चलेगा कि मैं टेक्नोलॉजी बाहर से ले आऊं, मशीन्स बाहर से ले आऊं, ये मैन्युफैक्चर करूं, कंपोनेंट्स असेंबल करके दे दूं, उससे काम नहीं चलेगा. दैट इज व्हाट अतुल आल्सो सेड. दैट इज व्हाट मिस्टर शर्मा आल्सो सेड. उसके लिए क्या हम इस तरह का एक मिशन बनाने की कोशिश कर सकते हैं? सॉफ्टवेयर में हमने बहुत सारा काम किया. Today we are known for this thing. But if you see how many standards have we developed in software, nobody will question if you say we've done pioneering work in software, world class world, right? But have we actually tried to develop some standards based on our software processes? Probably not. And we are not good at monetizing the knowledge that we have. Standards are a way of monetizing your own research, your own processes that you can do. So this is one way, and this is the thought that I wanted to leave you with. We've talked about the production-linked incentive schemes. And there have been, different opinions on PLI schemes. PLI schemes should be available to MSMEs. PLI schemes to be available to labor-intensive sectors. Now, let me tell you something about the genesis and the thought behind the PLI scheme. PLI scheme is derived from our Prime Minister's vision of Make in India, of being Atmanirbhar. और उसमें बहुत केयरफुली उन सेक्टर्स को आइडेंटिफाई किया गया जहां पर वी आर क्रिटिकली डिपेंडेंट ऑन इंपोर्ट्स. अगर किसी जियो पॉलिटिकल सिचुएशन में इंपोर्ट बंद हो जाए उस कमोडिटी का, सर्वाइवल विल बिकम डिफिकल्ट फॉर अस. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, in pharmaceuticals, we do not have the APIs to produce paracetamol. Entire APIs, they were imported for producing paracetamols. आपका बुखार कम नहीं कर सकते आप अपने आप. Now, supposing in a geopolitical situation, some country which is exporting APIs to us would stop that. What are we to do there? That is where the thought of PLI developed. Let us try to develop critical abilities domestically where we are strongly dependent on imports. This is the primary focus of PLI schemes. And the idea was to create large-scale global champions which would not only create to domestic market, but also cater to world markets. And you see, no large company which is producing at that level can survive without developing a component ecosystem. So it is not that kind of large company cannot exist in isolation. It needs to have, like you gave the example of the auto industry. It started with the large companies coming in, but gradually over a period of time, we've developed a very, very strong component ecosystem. Although, even if you see now, whole lot of those vendors are directly importing from Japan. You have to see, when you get into the details, then you see a whole lot of imports are still taking place. But a huge difference has been made. That is exactly what we tried to do when we were trying to implement the PLI scheme for air conditioners and the LED lights. We are focusing only on components, and there is enough scope for everyone, right from small companies, MSMEs to large companies. Everybody is welcome. There is place for everyone there. And for those who may not know, let me tell you, the total scheme is 6,238 crores of our incentive outgo. We still have a lot of money left. We have opened the scheme again, and it is open till the 25th of April. So if you are willing to invest in electronic components which are eligible, which get into ACs or LED lights, you can get benefits of the PLI scheme, which is open for you as of today. The last date is 25th of April. If you need any assistance, please get in touch with us. I would request Elsina to organize, hand-holding sessions with us. We are very happy to do that in terms of implementation schemes. And I hope when it comes to implementation part, our guidelines are reasonably good. Whatever issue that you've raised, we have tried to iron out everything. And we've tried to ensure that, when I am gone and 2 years later or 5 years later, there is a different set of people sitting in finance. They don't get into trouble for industry to get the PLI flows back to the industry, which is actually the government's promise. Electronics is actually all pervasive. It's become all pervasive now. Everything that was done mechanically, chemically, physically is now being done through the chips. So you can actually make a huge difference to our lives, everybody's life. And Honorable PM said when he was launching the Startup India program, startup is not about making money. It is about solving society's problems. So long as you are focused only on PPP, profit, only profit. It is a very short-term approach. If you look at, all these companies, Fortune 500 companies, you look at Fortune 20 companies, Fortune 20 companies today in 21, and you take the list of Fortune 20 companies 10 years ago or 20 years ago, and you compare the two lists, which are the common ones. And then you will see only those companies who have continuously innovated, continuous innovation, are able to survive the next 10 years and still be able to be part of Fortune 20. So innovation is required. In this internet age, every field of knowledge gets enriched by the hour. By the hour. हर घंटे में कुछ ना कुछ नई नॉलेज ऐड हो रही है और वो सबको अवेलेबल भी हो रही है. और अगर हम कुछ नया नहीं कर रहे हैं, are we on the right path? I always ask myself, आज मैंने नया क्या किया? If I am not doing something new, if I am not learning something new today, my day is wasted. As an industry, as such a critical industry for human survival now, electronics components, can we think about this? आज हमने नया क्या किया? Innovation has to be the bedrock of the hardware industry in electronics. If it is not possible at small firms levels, I understand, it's difficult for small companies to invest so much into components. Can we as an industry do something about it? Noida is probably the best placed for developing a component ecosystem. You see, you have best of the hardware factories here. You have best of management business schools here. You have best of engineering innovation schools here. Can we develop this at the Silicon Valley of hardware? You have everything here. I mean, government is, we would like to hear if anything else is needed. Let's try to create institutional mechanisms which will give us results 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line. It can't be a short-sighted approach. I'm sure you appreciate. And in fact, deriving from the scholarly speech of Atul and the very passionate speech of Vinod ji, this is what I can say. Risk to lena padega. As an entrepreneur, risk to lena padega. अगर हम सोचेंगे कि रिस्क नहीं लेंगे, जो चल रहा है वो चलने देंगे, वो यार वहां से कंपोनेंट मंगा लो, एज ही सेड कि चाइना से ही लेना है, सस्ता मिल रहा है, उसी को लेकर के अपना काम चलाना है. That is not the right approach. An entrepreneur has to take the risk if you are worth your salt. It's very, very important. We cannot be dependent on technology that we get transferred from abroad. Even for PLI schemes, हम क्या कर रहे हैं? कैपिटल इन्वेस्टमेंट में टेक्नोलॉजी ट्रांसफर के लिए भी परमिटेड है. तो हम क्या कर रहे हैं? जो हमें इक्विपमेंट बनाना है, वो उसका सारी कैपिटल गुड्स मंगाएंगे और उसके बेसिस पे अपना करेंगे. राइट? R&D एक्सपेंडिचर you already said this minimal. कौन करेगा? डिक्सन नहीं करेगा तो कौन करेगा बताओ? You have to do it, yeah. Let's do it. Yeah. There's no choice. There's no choice. आपने ITA की बात की. Right? So ITA is given now. You can't unfortunately help it. उसको bypass करने का क्या तरीका हो सकता है? Develop new components based on new standards. And then we'll enforce. Like for example, there was this idea, we have, now supposing Google Maps were to shut down its services, what will happen? Supposing the GPS systems that you have today, it's an American system. If they decide कि हम इसको बंद कर दे रहे हैं, क्या होगा आपका? आप रेडिसन ब्लू भी नहीं पहुंच पाएंगे अपने आप. Should we not have domestic solutions to this? And we have. Now we have Navig constellation of our satellites. And Qualcomm has developed those chips which use the Navig system along with the GPS systems. Can we think of making it compulsory across the board? कि अगर इंडिया में रहना है तो सारे मोबाइल फोन्स में नाविक कंप्लायंट चिप होना ही चाहिए. आज नहीं करेंगे, 3 साल बाद करेंगे. Develop the capacity, give them the time. Can we do something like this? So, you need to think about new ideas, how we could actually develop this hardware capital. Could be a very, very lofty kind of a objective, but why not? Unless you think big, you can't even take the first step towards it. Thank you very much, gentlemen. It's been a pleasure talking to all of you, and thanks for having me. Thank you.